What up, everybody? BMF Season 3, Episode 3, titled Sanctuary, primarily revolves around Meech and his father Charles' love for music and the bond they have through music, both of them seeing music as their sanctuary. Attending Jack the Rapper, aka Family Affair, a musical event, even getting to see a young Tupac at Jack the Rapper, as well as this episode guest starring Lil Baby as Pain. Pac and Baby most likely two of Big Meech's favorite rappers in real life. Seeing they used Tupac's song All Eyes on Me for the theme of the Season 3 trailer. And Lil Baby's always referencing Meech and BMF in his music. 4PF look like the new BMF and feel like I'm Meech when I ride in these cars. Who else you know pull up, whole entourage in a foreign? Just a couple off the top of my mind. Baby being from the streets of Atlanta in real life probably grew up looking up to Meech in some type of way also. Getting me to the episode breakdown, and there are some very important events that took place in this episode that will have significant impact in the future. The first scene of this episode was Charles teaching young Meech how to play the drums. This is laying the foundation to the whole episode and the bond that Charles and Meech have, despite what we saw taking place in the first season when Charles put Meech out for being a drug dealer. Meech and Charles are actually closer than we ever realized. Then the very next scene was present day Meech walking up to his stash house as it was being robbed. We later found out that it was Remy Ransom's crew that did the robbery because Meech was told they were shining like new money with new wardrobes on. But this caused Stax to get upset and want to go to war with Remy and the Techwood crew. Keeping in mind they were also responsible for killing his nephew Ty Washington. But Meech is continuing to avoid going to war, which caused Stax to walk out. But when Stax left, his crew stayed behind with Meech, because after the stash house was robbed, Meech sold his Rolex collection to put money in all his crew's pockets for what was lost. And Payne and the rest of the soldiers told Stax they were staying with Meech. This robbery caused Meech to start looking for a house in the suburbs and in a gated community, somewhere safe, where he doesn't have to worry about being robbed or shot at. But Duffy told him that the HOA is like the mafia itself, and the paperwork needs to be right. So this caused Meech to fly Charles down to Atlanta and ask him to sign the paperwork on the house, putting the house in Charles' name. But Meech had altered Charles' income at GM, saying he was an engineer so he would qualify. When Charles found this out, he got upset, told Meech it was illegal, and then told Meech he's going to have to think about it first. Later, at the end of the episode, after attending Jack the Rapper, Meech convinced Charles to go ahead and put the house in his name. Now, anyone who knows the BMF story knows that this is going to be one of the most important storylines at the end of this series. Because one of the main reasons that Meech ended up taking a plea instead of taking it to trial, even though the feds didn't really have anything on him, was because the fact they began to threaten Meech about prosecuting Charles for the exact house we just saw him put in his name. And this was the final straw that caused Meech to take the plea, at least from what I've heard. Getting me to Jack the Rapper. Meech first heard about Jack the Rapper when he went to confront Angel, thinking that she set him up to get killed by the MKs in episode 2. But he found out that Angel had nothing to do with it. But what Meech did find out was that there was a big event going down that takes over the whole city called Jack the Rapper. Jack the Rapper has cats come from across the whole nation to elevate their hustle. When Charles first arrived to Atlanta, he saw the tickets and was intrigued. But Meech didn't want Charles at the event because it wasn't the same old family affair that Charles had once heard about. But soon after Meech arrived to Jack the Rapper, he bumped into none other than Charles Flannery himself. Then as Meech was telling Charles that he needed to leave, the whole conversation was overheard by Glock, the leader of the MKs, who took it upon himself to connect with Charles. While Charles was fellowshipping with Glock, Meech was making connections. The first connection he made was with the leader of the St. Louis crew, led by Jay Pusher and his little brother, who is an athlete, and most likely who I believe to be Nelly. Meech plans on doing business with them, but he said that he needs to take a trip to St. Louis first to check out their operation. So we'll see Meech making a trip to connect with Jay Pusher in St. Louis later this season. Then we get to a classic scene for me personally. Not just because Tupac is smoking a blunt inside that place, because he said that Cali Kush was burning a hole in his pocket, and it shows Meech and Pac smoking a blunt together. But when I was young, I grew up looking up to Michael Jordan. Then as a teenager, I looked up to Pac. But after I got into the game in my late teens and early 20s, it was Big Meech. Like they said, Big Meech is a real life legend. He was that dude. He had respect in the streets and in the music industry. So seeing Pac and Meech on the screen together was sentimental for me personally. Then things got real as Meech got back to his crew and Charles walked up to Meech with Glock. And Tina noticed that Glock was an MK. Then Meech knew what time it was and him and Glock stood face to face. Glock called Meech a thief and pretty much declared war against him, telling Meech that he owns the security at that place, just like he owns the pimp who cleans Meech's money, talking about Greenie, letting Meech know who was behind the attack in episode 2. Then a fight broke out on stage which caused a giant brawl to break out all throughout the place, and Glock quickly got out of there and Meech engaged in the fight. Even Charles got one in on a guy who was about to swing on Meech. But with the info Meech got from Glock, he went to beat down Greenie and took Angel home with him in the process. So we know for sure that we haven't heard the last of Greenie or the whole situation with the Miami Killers. On the Detroit side of things with Terry, he now has his restaurant officially up and running. We also learned that Roland had a baby and has a little girl now. So this might actually cause Roland to reconsider being in the game. Terry also found out at this point that Henrietta was moving in on all his clientele and getting them to cop their weight from her instead. When Terry had a meeting with the guys, they told him that they didn't appreciate Meech's little brother pressing them over every little thing. And when Terry had a chance to make things right, he straight up told them that he's not Meech and he's doing things his way, which caused some of the guys to walk out. But T caught his boy Diz that he known since Little League and convinced him to stay on his side. But T wanted Diz to play both sides and get info on Henrietta because Henrietta is now T's direct competitor because she has pure weight coming in from the Chaldeans. Detective Bryant, who is now working for Henrietta, is assigned to escort Henrietta's shipment and comes up with the idea to use an ambulance. But Diz finds out about this by getting close to Henrietta, something he definitely may pay for later. I'm thinking that it may be Diz who Henrietta is setting on fire with the flamethrower. So T arranges it for Hoop and Sterling's top shooter Cuts to rob the shipment, or at least stop it from arriving to its destination. This would have left Henrietta without any product, forcing all the clientele who walked away from T to work with Henrietta to come back for T for their weight. And T said he was going to raise the prices on them when they come back, calling them ungrateful. But in all honesty, that's just how the game works. When I was first coming up in the game, I would leverage two rival dealers against each other and cop from whoever was offering me the better price at the time, until I found my own out-of-town plug that kept me flooded with work. Now keep in mind that Cuts is being watched by Detective Brian Anderson because he's the lead suspect in Saint's murder case. So while Hoop and Cuts are staking out, looking for the ambulance, the cops are snapping pictures of them. So Cuts and Hoop went to take the truck and shot the driver, but Bryant was able to get out and shoot Cuts in the shoulder and continue shooting out with Hoop until Detective Jim pulled up and got shot by the driver who was with Bryant. Then Bryant was spotted by Detective Jen and had the opportunity to kill her, but he chose to shoot the driver instead to make sure that he didn't shoot Detective Jen again. Bryant and Hoop each got away and Anderson captured Cuts, who is now in police custody. The thing is, Bryant was able to make sure that the shipment got back to Henrietta, so after all that, T's plan didn't even go as planned. And to make matters even worse, Henrietta's cousin was killed, causing her to wage war against BMF. One giant question though is, does Hoop know that Bryant was who actually killed Henrietta's cousin? Because we do know that Hoop saw Bryant and told T about it, because at the end of the episode, T went to offer Bryant a job like old times, but Bryant told T that he would rather get ran over than come back to work for him. But when Henrietta found out that her cousin was killed, she told Detective Bryant to tell her everything that he knows about Terry Flannery. Next thing you know, Terry has a CPS officer at LaWanda's house threatening to take Terry Jr., as well as the unborn baby LaWanda is pregnant with. Now, obviously, Henrietta is behind this, but Terry must have forgot how connected her father is because he let LaWanda convince him at first that Markeisha was behind it, causing T to go confront Markeisha about it after turning her down earlier in the episode. Because of this, Markeisha was able to win Terry back over. So Terry again is stuck in the middle between Markeisha and LaWanda. And when they were about to hook up, Lucille came knocking on Terry's door about the situation because she had spent a few years in foster care and doesn't want her grandchildren to have to experience that life. Before Lucille found out about this, she took that date offer up with Maurice, who brought her candy from their hometown and gave her a check for $10,000 for their church bake sale. And at the end of the episode, when Charles got home from Atlanta, he saw the check. So what will Charles do next? Will he continue to fight for his marriage, or will he let it go and go move to Atlanta to live with Meech? And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.